Welcome back to What's on My Needles, and this will be the last video in the series about the little baby dragon. So at the end of last video we got to this point, so the underside of the belly is done, the wings are done, the back is done. So what we have today is the feet, which will attach these little pearl pads, the head, and then the back ridge. So you're not going to get a totally detailed version of how to do every single step, but I'll see how much time we can put into this. I will say that before the head is worked, all these ends that go anywhere near the body that you're going to weave in towards the body need to be done, because once we start putting the head on, being able to flip it inside out to weave in those ends is going to be near to impossible. The only ones that I will leave out at that point in time is the gray one right here. So again, I'm doing it with gray and blue for photography purposes. The pattern is written for black and purple. But that one will be left so I can weave it into the head and close the hole that way. So the first step is the feet. And again, his little feet look like that. And let me get set up and we can get started. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to these social media platforms. Links will be provided in the description below. So I'm all set up to work on the feet. I'm just going to show you how one of them works. So as you'll see, there are two lines of pearl ridges. Now the pearls have little up bumps and little down bumps. I'm going to go into an up bump. I'm going to grab my yarn. Just like picking up stitches for the provisional cast on, I'm going to hold the working yarn and the tail together while I pull through that first loop. I'm going to go into the next up bump and grab a loop, and the last up bump and grab a loop. And I'm going to flip the whole dragon around so I can get to the loops or the bumps on the other side. So again, these are still the same up bumps even though they look like they're pointing down from this direction. 1, 2, and 3. But our little dragon's feet aren't quite that small. So now we need to work a couple of increases. Now I actually do work this only with 3 needles. If it is more comfortable for you to distribute them differently, that's entirely possible. So I need to make one in between these first 2 stitches. Now I'm actually going to pick up the down bump and pick up the stitch from there, knit the stitch, and again pick up from that down bump, lift it up, and knit into it. This is a little fiddly, it is a little hard, but it does make for a much tighter edge. So when we stuff it, it's a lot less noticeable. Now on this side, I can't get to those down bumps. They're back here. So instead, I'm just going to pick up the bar in between the 2 stitches. Now the pattern, it is actually only marked as a make one, because truthfully, unless you do a full yarn over without twisting it, it's not really going to matter which version you use. So now I'm going to knit for 2 rounds. One or 4 sides. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the way I actually make sure that I've done this right is I know that there are 3 rows, or 3 rounds, sorry, with 10 stitches. So I go and I find where that pickup was, and I go 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now we need to make his little feet dip in again, just a little bit. So this is our left leaning decrease, or an SSK, knit 1, and our right leaning decrease, or knit 2 together. And repeat it on the other side of the foot. And that's it, right? No, we need to graft it together. So I'm going to cut a nice long tail. Going to grab out a little tiny bit of fluff. So a little bit of fluff. I roll it around in my hand to make it a little easier. And stuff, 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 stuff. Now, I personally like these little feet really solid. So they're often a lot more solid than the bodies of the little critters that I make. Now, I'm sure all of you have done this before, but I just fold the yarn in half and go through the darning needle. So grafting. Grafting is that step that a lot of people are scared of when it comes to socks. And that's where we find it the most. Grafting is putting these 2 rows of stitches together with what looks like one more row of stitches. So it's not a bind off. I'm not slipping one stitch over another. I'm literally sewing the 2 together. So I came from the underside of that one. So I'm going to insert my needle from the back of the loop to the front of the loop and pull it off, because for me it's actually easier to pull it off than from the front of the loop to the back, then from the back of the loop to the front. And then I tighten everything up. And I go back in that first loop, go in through the front, then go through the back of the next loop, pull that one off and pull. Front, back, and pull, and front, back, and pull. Now I've flipped my dragon around, and I'm going to insert my needle into that last stitch. And for me, because I can't get to the inside of the foot anymore, I'm actually going to pull the yarn out, and then I'll weave in the end a little bit later. So that's how the 4 little feet are worked. And I will be right back when it is time, when I'm ready to move on to the head. If you would like to help fund this page, please find me on Patreon at Theatrical Crafts. So I have finished off the 4 little feet. I've woven in all of the ends that go into the body, including the ones on the wings, so it's a bit easier to see what's going on now. So now what I'm going to do is start working on the head. So just like we did before with a provisional cast on, going to wiggle my knitting needle in and unloop that 1 stitch. And the pattern says to pick up 8 stitches from the provisional cast on. I'm sure you're going, but wait, we only casted on 7. Well, you'd be right. But casting on 7 stitches actually gives us 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. Because it's the half stitches on either side and these 6 in the middle. So from this direction it was 7, so there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. From this direction, it is 8. So, but that was just place them on the needle. That wasn't pick up and knit. That's not quite where we're starting with this round. Where we are starting is in fact here. So the whole reason I do the slip stitches at the beginning, or at the beginning of each row, so it's super simple to pick up stitches. So I'm going to pick up and knit 12 stitches, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm, just because of how I work, I'm going to break it there so it's a bit easier to do a triangle to begin with. And 1, 2, 3, and I just, so something's not quite right because I've only got space for 5 more, but that's okay. So I pulled all those out, so it's insert the needle, loop around, and pull through. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add a stitch. I'm going to add one right here. So that's just a backwards E cast on, but it's a super simple way to just add a stitch. Then knit. So 6, 6, and 8. And then the 8 stitches from the tummy. And it's actually going to work much like this until it's time to put the beads on for the eyes. There are a couple increases here and there. There are a couple funny little things, but it's mostly just increases and making sure that I know where the sides of the head are versus the top versus the bottom. And I'm just going to show you how the beads work, even though I'm not in the right spot for them. But I'm going to take out itty bitty steel hook. So this is a 1.5 millimeter hook. I'm going to take out some beads. So these are not regular pony beads. These are in fact 4 millimeter pony beads. I actually have 2 that don't match, but this is just for demo purposes. So I'm going to insert the crochet hook into the bead. I'm going to go over to my knitting, slip one of the stitches onto the hook, and then pull it through the bead, put the stitch back on the needle, and then I would knit the stitch. And the bead is right there. It's not going to move, it's not going to slide around, and it's not making the work any bigger or saggy anywhere. But as said, I'm not quite at that point yet. So I'm going to finish up on the head. The pattern does say to weave in the rest of the ends about halfway through and to stuff the body. The head finishes with grafting, and then all that's left is the back, and that's just picking up stitches, working till it tells you that you're done, and then grafting them back down on the other side. So you now have all the skills to make your very own little dragon. This video was sponsored by Sam Cardenas, my stylist at Color Street. To find a link to my party through her, please check the description below.